Good afternoon and welcome to Geometry for the 2021 school year, third period with Sorbara. That's me, Miss Sorbara. Um, in for success in geometry, on pretty much any math, um, the fear of it is the biggest obstacle. The fear and the related dislike. I don't. The hating is probably a strong word. Well, not for some, but we overcome that by finding the reality in it, finding that it is something that is tangible and something that we're surrounded by. And this is where, of all the maths in the sequence that you go through in high school, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then beyond, um, geometry is the one that has a really strong context in that you can see shapes and you can see angles and you can see all of these things and how they fit together or don't fit together. So there is a strong context there. And so hopefully we can overcome some of that hatred and fear and see how this can be used in life and maybe not dislike it so much. Um, we work very hard on understanding the process and understanding which process works for which student. So in math, there's usually one good solid answer, but there's very often many, many different ways to get there. And so so we try to find the best way for the individual student to get there, to make sense of it. And that means applying some critical thinking skills. And so we spend a lot of time in math working on general math skills, which that fundamentally help with the overall understanding of math. We do design challenges. We use an approach called design-based learning. There's 7 to 10 design challenges that we'll do throughout the year. Your students have already done one. Together, we will be constructing a city. Yes, we're going to do it virtually, and we're going to figure out how to do that and get the kids working together and working on problem solving, communication, collaboration, and presentation skills, all of which are important life skills as well as math skills. Doing this gives an opportunity for the application of math in a real context, especially in geometry, because what we're going to be building is taking the concepts that we're working on in the book and applying them in real life to a three-dimensional object and seeing how it works. It's pretty fun. The units of study in geometry, there's 6 units of study, and there are many people that when I say this word, proof, kind of twitch or cringe a little bit and kind of go back to high school and maybe not so enjoyable memories of it. We try and make it as enjoyable as possible, but proofs are hard. They are. They're very meticulous about the order in which you say things and the theorems and postulates that you use in order to support your argument. But they're valuable, and they're a valuable tool in developing mathematical thinking and reasoning and making sure that when you're working something out that it actually makes sense. So we will get through them. Everybody will be fine. Everybody will survive and hopefully even come out of geometry with a favorable experience. I know it can be done. It's been done before. The unit on extending to 3 dimensions is kind of interjected throughout the year. As you might have heard, we're going to be building throughout the year. So I tend to spread that throughout the year. Connecting algebra and geometry through coordinates. Geometry, I really look at as the application of algebra. So this is an important unit and an important way of seeing that algebra and all those letters and numbers that you were working with, that they kind of mean something and do something. We work a lot with circles. It's fascinating what you can do with a circle and learn from a circle and coordinate with triangles. And then there's all kinds of crazy math that goes on there. And then we end up the year with a very small amount of applications of probability. which is usually just a little foundational piece for the math that comes in the future. The resources we use or have available to us are our textbook, excuse me, and the most important resource is right here, the student journal. The student journal is what we take all of our notes in. Um, all of the theorems and postulates that students use are listed in there, so it's a great resource to have when you're working on those proofs. Um, I highly encourage that students get a set of colored pencils because the paper in the student journal it's almost like newsprint. It's really thin, and if you're using markers or pens, it bleeds through right to the other side, and then it becomes very hard to read. So I highly encourage that the students get, even if it's just like 3 or 4 different colored pencils for highlighting, for color coding, because the student journal is in black and white, and there's times when there's so many things going on within a particular piece that you want to be able to color code and see the differences. And it's just a good note-taking practice anyways to color code. Students probably also need a notebook where they can do other work that's not from the student journal. We also use Khan Academy and Desmos. Students will have accounts set up in both of these programs. Khan Academy is another resource for lessons and some exercises. There are things that the textbook does really well, and then other areas where it's maybe not as strong. Then I tend to turn to Khan Academy. I also turn to Khan Academy for the student who maybe just needs a different perspective and some reinforcement. And Khan Academy is great for that. If you've never gone to the khanacademy.com and watched a video or seen any of it, it's good. He's easy to listen to. As he's talking, he goes through and works through problems. It's a good resource. And then Desmos is basically a graphing program. We don't use it as much in geometry as we do in the algebras, but it is a good resource, and students will become familiar with it. I put tutorial as a resource because that is always an opportunity on the off days, especially now on the off days when I don't see the students. So I see the students Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. On Tuesday and Thursday, they have an opportunity in the afternoon for tutorial. So if they need to drop in and get some help or work through some problems, that is a great resource. The materials and resources kind of cross over a little bit. So single subject, graph paper notebook. A compass is going to be important, especially when we get back on campus, because I do like for the students to learn how to use the geometry tools. And the two most important tools are the compass and the protractor. Protractors, I have a bunch here. Compasses, though, are harder to come by because a bad compass is almost useless. So if you have maybe older high school student, older brother or sister that has a good compass from their geometry time, maybe they could pass it on down. Or if you happen to be in Staples and you see a nice compass, usually a nice compass is $8 or $10. Grab it. A nice compass is usually made mostly of metal. The best ones have the wheel in the middle to where it doesn't slip at all, and so you can get a nice circle and not having it slip all over the place. You can learn a lot from a circle. You'd be amazed, and a good compass is important to that. Calculator, don't buy a calculator. They have awesome calculators on their phones. Desmos is another calculator. So, unless you don't want them to have a phone and you want them to have, you just need a good scientific calculator. It's got to have the sine, cosine, and tangent are the 3 keys that you're looking for. As long as it has those, they'll be set, okay? Because we will be doing some trig later on in the year. So the grading policy is that assignments, assessments, and projects are 50% of the grade. Classwork and homework, remote learning especially, but even in my classroom, classwork and homework kind of, fade into each other. I like to do the most intense work in class when we're together and can help each other out. And so homework tends to be just finishing that stuff up. So I count it, as the same value, 30% of the grade. The design challenges that we do are going to be 10% of the grade, and then citizenship participation are 10%. That includes, that's important because interaction in this class is going to be important, feedback, working with each other, supporting your classmates, and pulling your weight when there is something that has to be done by a group. Okay. Late work, we deduct 10% for every class day that it's late. Obviously, if it's an excused absence, we don't do that. If the student has an excused absence for 3 days, the student has 3 days to make it up without penalty. But if it's unexcused and they just didn't do the assignment, they lose 10% every day after 5 days, and that's class days. So I only count the class days. I don't count, weekends and the day they're not here. After 5 class days, it's not accepted because at that point it's worth less, almost 50. It's lost 50% of its value, and it's lost its meaning in the time. Okay, in the context. All that being said, what's going on right here? This is weird. This is weird stuff, and so we do take that into account, and I'm real, and I'm real about it. Stuff happens. Computers break down. The internet goes. All that stuff happens. I know it. The whole key to that kind of stuff is just going to be communication. Communication on the part of the student, letting me know what's going on, and then we can, kind of figure out a way of dealing with it. So I'm not unreasonable about that stuff. Class notes and communication. Google Classroom is the center of the universe. If there's any good thing to come out of this, I've actually developed a really good habit of at the end of every class, I go right to Google Classroom and I summarize what we went over, what the expectations are, what your resources are. So Google Classroom is a great resource. And right now it goes all the way back to the beginning of the school year. So if you want to see what your students been doing, it's all summarized right there. Remind is a school-friendly texting program. So each of my classes have a separate Remind account. If your student needs to get a hold of me, ask me a question, Remind is actually a better way of doing it than email, because Remind comes to me just like a text message and is returned to your student just like a text message, but in this like little safe school version of text messaging. So if your student has not already signed up for Remind, the instructions are on Google Classroom. It's very easy, very straightforward. I highly recommend Parent Portal. I know that at this point, most parents are on it. If you're not on it, contact your student's GLC and find out how to get on it, because it's a great way to keep track of any missing assignments or anything going on with grades. We do progress reports, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, and then at the end of semester. So keep an eye for those. But if you have Parent Portal, you know what's going on. So the progress reports are going to be no big surprise. And this is me. This is my email, jsorbara@wvusd.org. If you have any questions, if I've missed anything, or if you just want to send me a message and say hi, I accept them all. And that is the conclusion of this most unusual back to school night. I have to say, in my 20+ year teaching career, this is the strangest back to school night that I've ever taken part in. So, and hopefully it's the last time that it's like this. So I hope all is well, and I look forward to working with your student and having a fun year. Thanks.